The Russian army captures Velikaya Novoselovka. Russian forces make a powerful advance toward the Dnipropetrovsk region. Greetings, friends. Before we begin, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps the channel grow. I thank everyone who has subscribed. Today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of November 27, 2024. A tremendous number of events have occurred, so let's get started. We'll begin with a recent publication. Recently, The Economist collected interviews with a large number of Ukrainian officers and soldiers who are in direct communication with the front line. According to the surveyed soldiers, around 70% of their unit's personnel are generally in favor of ending the war, even if it requires surrendering territories to the Russian Federation. As we can see, a significant number of people are tired of this war and may not even understand its purpose. They likely don't understand why it began at all. However, despite the fact that up to 70% of the personnel of the armed forces of Ukraine may now be ready to stop the war, even if it means conceding some Ukrainian territory, Western countries are not yet prepared to end the conflict, President Zelensky included. For instance, today there are reports that Germany is preparing for war and confrontation with the Russian Federation. The country is gradually transitioning to a wartime footing, focusing primarily on civilian infrastructure projects, such as bunkers and bomb shelters. As for France and the United Kingdom, there are renewed discussions about deploying their contingents to Ukraine to prevent a breakthrough by Russian forces. Let me remind you, a few months ago, France raised this issue on the eve of the Kharkiv offensive, stating that if the Russian army managed a breakthrough, the French army would immediately deploy its contingent to Ukraine to stabilize the situation along the front line. Of course, the cherry on top is today's open calls by NATO urging member countries to carry out a preemptive precision strike against the Russian Federation. Increasingly, there are reports calling for troops to be sent in support of Ukraine. Simultaneously, information is spreading among NATO officials that Russia is not as strong as it was 2 years ago. For example, one high-ranking NATO official stated today that, although the size of the Russian army has doubled, its quality has significantly deteriorated compared to 2 years ago. This clearly illustrates how Western propaganda is working to prepare the public for a potential conflict with the Russian Federation. The Russian Ministry of Defense has provided a brief report on events that occurred between November 23rd and November 26th. Let me remind you that during this period, Ukraine launched massive missile strikes on Kursk and the Kursk region using American-made missiles. In these video clips, we can observe a construction equipment operator who was almost at the epicenter of one such strike. Interestingly, the footage shows the operator being just a few meters away from the blast's epicenter involving cluster munitions. The Russian Ministry of Defense also mentioned that retaliatory measures are currently being developed. This means that we may soon see either a massive missile strike on Ukrainian territory or possibly the second use of the Oreshnik complex in history. Despite all this, it is clear that the conflict is only escalating. The rhetoric from Western nations is becoming bolder and harsher. We are indeed witnessing Europe's preparation for military action and most likely for a war with the Russian Federation. The only question is where this war will take place. Will it remain confined to Ukrainian territory, or will the conflict's geography expand to neighboring countries? Here's the full English translation. Now, let's move to the front line. Let us begin with the Zaporizhia direction, where certain cartographic services report that Russian forces managed a slight advance over the past 24 hours toward the settlement of Malaya Tokmachka. However, there is currently no objective control data to confirm this. To summarize, the former prison south of this area is now semi-encircled, and it is possible that the Russian army is preparing for assault operations. Looking back at the events since November 24th, we see that in recent days, Russian forces have managed to expand their control northeast of the settlement of Rabatino, according to verified reports. There was footage from the Ukrainian armed forces showing FPV drones striking Russian frontline positions. North of Novopokrovka, on November 24th, reports emerged that Russian forward units had entered the eastern outskirts of Belogori. So, if we sum it up, there is a strong impression that the Russian army has initiated a wide-scale, gradual offensive toward Malaya Tokmachka. However, there is not enough data yet to draw definitive conclusions. Moving further to the Zaporizhia direction, though the battle for Velyka Novosilovka is often referred to as part of the Zaporizhia front, it may be more accurate to label it the South Donetsk direction. Nonetheless, we'll adhere to commonly accepted terms. Regarding Velyka Novoselovka, a significant amount of imagery and objective control data is available, including adjustments to the front line according to various cartographic services and geolocation data. Based on updates from pro-Russian cartographic services, Russian forces have reportedly entered the geographical boundaries of Velyka Novoselovka. Russian sources claim that the Russian army has taken control of farms located within the settlement's boundaries. According to reports from military experts, war correspondents, and bloggers closely connected to ground sources, Russian units have secured positions along Vishnevaya Street. This indicates a high likelihood that Russian forces now control approximately 15 to 20% of Velyka Novoselovka, a significant and rapid advance. If we compare this progress with other settlements, it is quite remarkable. Additionally, today has seen the release of numerous objective control materials showing FPV drones striking Ukrainian light vehicles as they move between parts of the city. It's likely these clips depict routine evacuations of wounded, referred to as 300s or 200s, or the transportation of supplies and ammunition. FPV drone strikes are being carried out during these operations. As we can see, the city has been placed under tight control and surrounded. At this stage, Ukrainian forces appear unable to mount significant resistance, and Russian advances are steadily moving in a northwestern direction. Next, we shift focus to the settlement of Razdolne, which has also seen numerous updates. Cartographic services and experts have highlighted this area with various flag icons. According to a pro-Ukrainian mapping service, Russian forces have taken control of at least 50% of Razdolne. Meanwhile, pro-Russian sources claim that 70 to 80% of the settlement is now under Russian control. Certain experts even suggest complete control over a small village in the area. However, the primary strategic value of this region lies not in Razdolne itself, but in the company-level strongpoint located west of it. Reports indicate that while Ukrainian forces still control this strongpoint, the westernmost part of Razdolne is either in the grey zone or under Ukrainian control. For Russian forces, capturing the strongpoint west of Razdolne is the top priority. If they succeed in dislodging Ukrainian forces from this position, it could mark a turning point in the battle for Velyka Novoselovka. Following such a breakthrough, events are expected to unfold much more rapidly. Now, moving to the Uspenivka fortified area. The Uspenivka fortified area is gradually being degraded under the strikes and pressure of Russian assault groups. At present, the main developments and geolocation updates come from three settlements: Ilinka, Yelizavetovka, and Romanovka. For example, regarding Ilinka, Russian sources today published new footage of assault operations. In these videos, we can observe large numbers of Russian armored vehicles advancing from several directions across a broad front. The vehicles are seen entering from the north into the eastern part of the settlement, including farmland areas. Based on this significant collection of geolocated episodes, Russian equipment has been recorded on Velikaya Street in the eastern part of Ilinka, as well as near farms in the northern part. From these visuals, the disputed territory of Ilinka appears to have shifted in favor of the Russian armed forces. There is little doubt that Ilinka, Yelizavetovka, and Romanovka have either already come under full Russian control or are about to. Additionally, reports from Yelizavetovka indicate that specific Russian units have fully taken over this settlement. Objective control footage shows Russian assault groups and vehicles entering a farm located in the southeastern part of Yelizavetovka. Beyond this point, there are no additional videos to confirm further advances. However, as noted earlier, it is highly likely that all three settlements are now under Russian control. Next, moving to Kurakhove. This area has also generated a significant number of updates. Yesterday, objective control footage showed the deployment of Russian airborne units in the central part of the settlement. Following the release of this footage, most cartographic services, whether pro-Western, pro-Ukrainian, neutral, or pro-Russian, made adjustments to their maps. Shortly after the footage was published, the Ukrainian side launched a series of counteroffensive actions aimed at dislodging Russian units from their positions. However, all incoming Ukrainian equipment was destroyed by Russian FPV drones. The entire operation in central Kurakhove resembled a special operation by the Russian side, seemingly aimed at luring Ukrainian units into the open. At present, regarding central Kurakhove, there have been no further frontline adjustments. Some sources claim that the Russian army now controls up to 45% of the settlement, including the Kurakhove power plant. Updates from pro-Ukrainian cartographic services indicate that the Ukrainian armed forces have abandoned the farm located in the southeastern part of the settlement. This development aligns with predictions made in previous discussions. An interesting aspect is the footage published by the 33rd Mechanized Brigade. These clips show Ukrainian forces attempting to push Russian units out of fields and forest belts near the company-level strongpoint. While the footage is quite graphic, it depicts Ukrainian assault groups attempting to clear this forested area and drive back Russian troops or entrenchments toward the rear. This indicates progress toward the strongpoint itself and a significant expansion of control along Route 0510. As we discussed earlier, the Russian army is likely to continue advancing westward, aiming to flank both the strongpoint and the Uspenivka fortified area, heading north towards Selidovo. In this direction, objective control footage has also emerged. Today, Ukrainian sources published videos of FPV drone strikes on Russian forward positions in the settlement of Petrovka. These visuals prompted cartographic adjustments. Additionally, pro-Ukrainian cartographic services report an expansion of control in the same village, though without significant changes. There are also reports of fighting for the settlement of Zholtaya. According to objective control data, Ukrainian forces still maintain a presence in this area. However, an increasing number of materials and sources indicate the onset of active combat in this settlement.